I should pay attention to the page where we're going live. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It feels like it's been a little bit of time since it's just been me and you and a cup of tea here talking about Lightroom. A couple of things. First off, just real quick, photorec.tv/Lightroom. That is the easiest place to go to find all of those previous workshops that I've hosted that are 100% available to you for free. And each of those workshops has its own accompanying handout available for you too as well. So go to photorec.tv/Lightroom. You will find all of that information right there. Tonight is one of you, Brooke. You mentioned this during one of those workshops. You were like, I'd love to get a couple of pictures, have everybody edit them, get back together, see how everybody has edited them, and see how you, Toby, would edit them. That's a great idea. That's what we're doing tonight. So if you go to photorec.tv/edit with me, I should have made that a little link down below. Roy has put it. Roy, in the chat, thank you so much for being there. Roy, will you put that in the chat as well? If you go to photorec.tv/edit with me, you can find the files that you need. I'll show you that now over here. We'll do that together. So here we are with the photorec.tv/edit with me. Here's the video you all can watch. It's a little. And here are the files that you can edit during tonight's broadcast. If you're watching this not live, you can still edit them and then just pause it right now. Edit them and then see how I edit them. And of course, I think the best part of tonight is the part where you take, and you do have to be watching this live for this to work, you take one or two of those images out of the 4 that I'm providing you, and you send them back to me. Now, I said before the beginning of the show, this is the beginning of the show, but technically, we could do it in a few more minutes. So don't stress. If you'd still like to participate and you're watching live, you just got to do a little quick editing. And then I'm going to edit these in just a few moments. And what we'll do is we'll edit one, then we'll take a look at some of yours. Then we'll edit one, then we'll take a look at some of yours. And just to give you a heads up, if you really want to play along, the first one I'm going to do is the Yosemite Valley, the Snowy Valley photo. So that's the first one. And I made a note here that I'm going to be using Lightroom and maybe dip into Photoshop a little bit, as I usually do. But you don't have to use those programs. You can use whatever you want and send me back JPEGs or DNGs for all of us to take a look at and see. And the goal here is there's no competition. The goal is just to kind of see how far did you push that image? How far did that person or me push that image? Or did they turn that into a black and white? Oh, does it look good? Would it be better as a color? It's just kind of for us to take a look at these and kind of compare how they all work out. So that's pretty much it. Just a reminder, photorec.tv/Lightroom for all those older files, for all of the older workshops, photorec.tv/edit with me for the files for tonight. And if you're watching this, chat room, so many of you, thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's lovely to see so many names in there. If you are hanging out with us right now, thank you. If you're watching this and you're not a Photo Enthusiast Network member, that is a community that I run along with David and Allie McKay, and I am incredibly proud of the content and the value that we provide. And we do have a special for new members running right now. It's just $24 for the year, access to an incredible, immense amount of content. If you watch my other workshops and you're like, hey, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about, I'd like to see more of his videos, I have poured my heart and soul into the content in pen over the last couple of years, and it is all there available to you. All of these Lightroom videos, plus so much more, and most importantly, a fantastic community of people that we love and enjoy spending time with each other, either virtually or in the real world, as many of them have been on McKay trips. But that's not a requirement. We've got people from all over the world that are part of this community, and it really is something cool. It's a great place to get feedback on images from time to time. It is a fantastic place for you to learn new tips, tricks, and techniques. And it's just a great place to kind of feel like you belong. That's one of the most important things about it to me. So, all right. All of that said, let's kind of dive right into this and get into Lightroom. So here we are in Lightroom. I provided you all 4 images, and the snowy Yosemite Valley is going to be the first image that I'm editing. All right, so I really love this image, the way it's shot. I'm going to move over to the develop module. This is an image I took this year in Yosemite. We had a beautiful snowy winter scene. It is, of course, quite dark. I often shoot my images a little bit underexposed to make sure that I protect for the colors and the brightness in the brighter areas of the image, in this case, the sky. I brought my crop tool up to look at rule of thirds. Kind of, I am violating the rule of thirds in some degrees here, as in if we flattened this horizon, if this wasn't a valley, if we brought this down and this down, I would be splitting this horizon just about equal, top and bottom. And I don't usually like to do that. And we'll see. As I brighten this, I might decide to crop later. I might come up from the bottom a little bit. I'm not sure how important all of that bottom stuff is. But for now, I want to see how it starts to respond to some editing. So I'm going to leave it right there where it is. And the first thing I'm going to do, if you follow this channel for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of the auto button as a way to kind of jumpstart your editing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, technically, if I was importing all of these images, I would have it automatically edit using the auto button. I've got videos that talk about that. But I'm going to hit auto and see what happens. That brought the brightness value of the shadowy areas up a bit. The sky it preserved, not a whole lot of difference. Let's do before and after with the auto. So I agree with these edits. The beginning. It's not enough. I'm not done, but it's a start. So let's take it a little bit further. Let me start to bring up the overall exposure a little bit more. We start to lose the sky. So I don't want to bring it up too much more. Let's come down to the shadows and see if I bring that up a little bit more. Yeah. Just get pretty bright there. One of the things that I don't want to do too much of, though, is just lose all of the kind of depth and also that kind of pre-dawn feeling down there. So we have to be careful not to go too high. But I think somewhere right in this vicinity feels pretty good to me. Now the whites, shadows, of course, is just kind of the general darker parts of the image. Whites is specifically the very brighter white pixels. And I want that snow to pop a little bit more. So I'm going to move that to the right a little bit more. And if I hit the J key, that shows me areas that are clipping so bright that they've lost any kind of detail, or, that's the red, or so dark that they are pure black. No detail there, that's the blue. And I don't mind the trunks. I think that I am starting to be bothered by that area there. So I'm going to bring those whites back down just until there's just a kiss of that light along there. All right. Texture. The auto button doesn't touch texture clarity or dehaze. So these are always up to you. I almost always move texture to the right globally a bit. 16 sounds good. Clarity up a bit. Dehaze. There is a bit of haze way back there, but as you probably heard me say other times, you don't want to just kind of dehaze everything all the time, because that haze allows us, the viewer, sitting here in front of this picture to say, that must be really far away. And it helps us kind of take in just the immensity of the scene. And if it was no haze at all, if there was no sense of depth to it, I think we would really lose the vastness of this valley that we're looking in and just how far away. That's Half Dome peeking up way over there, just how far away Half Dome is. So I might just move dehaze to the right a little bit to dehaze a little bit. Let's move it back the other way, see? I think it's fine right there in the center. I'm going to leave it alone for now. And vibration and saturate, or vibrance, I'm going to pump up a little bit more. I want a little more color to come out of that sky, but not much because I don't want the snow to take on a lot of color. And saturation went down to -2. I'm not sure why it decided to do that, but I'm just going to go +2 just to have a little bit more pop of color in the sky again. So let's again hit that backslash before and after. And if you ever want to, you can come over here to this little tool and say before, after, left, right. And then you get a side-by-side view of them sitting there sharing what they look like. So, all right, let's come back. Come off of that, back to our straight. All right, so, and one other thing I like to do in Tone Curve is add a little tiny crunch. This adds just a bit more contrast. It's very similar to the medium contrast, just a little bit less. So, and what's nice about the tone curve is you can apply it directly. So you want more contrast only in the darker areas, more contrast only in the brighter areas. That's what the tone curve allows you to do. But generally, I just do a little tiny crunch, and I've created that there. You can just grab these points and move them. All right, now, and then we could get into the detail panel with the sharpening, but right now we're going to leave our default settings. And I was on a tripod, so ISO 100 was available to me because I didn't care what shutter speed, so I don't really need to do any noise reduction. I can zoom in and see after it takes a second or two for this image to load that it's pretty sharp, and I'm not really bothered by any noise that's going on. Lens correction, oh, that should have been turned on. I remind myself, if I'm not using my preset, which does that automatically, I do forget to do that. That's why I really like having a preset. You can see that that really pretty big difference as far as brightness goes, especially in the corners as it takes away that vignetting, and it also straightens it, gets rid of some of that distortion. And now, in fact, I think it might be a little too bright. So that's why it's important to do that first, because you might end up undoing what you've done up here. So I am going to back that up just a little bit right there. All right, so that's all good. Now, there's more to do to this image. Those were the basic settings. And auto did most of that for me, and then I tweaked these a little bit more. But now I really want to see some more light in the sky, and, or sorry, more color in the sky. And I also want to see a little bit more brightness in the valley. And of course, if I use exposure, it's doing the whole image, and I, sacrifice one for the benefit of the other. I don't want that. So that's where the local area adjustments come in. I went down too low. So I'm going to get my linear graduated filter, or just graduated filter. And I'm going to draw it across the sky. I dragged from the top down. Now, I didn't say this at the beginning, but I'm not going to do super duper teaching on all of this because you've got those other workshops. This is really about me editing, and of course you can rewatch this as many times as you want. So I'm not going to talk about, like if you need to adjust this, grab out here. I'm just going to kind of do some of those things. And of course, let's make it a little wider like that. Now, the last linear filter that I used had texture and clarity set to 0, and kind of interesting, but let's reset that. By double-clicking effect, we've reset that. And let's start to do something like bring overall exposure down a bit. And maybe the highlights down a bit more. Now we can really start to see more of those clouds in the sky all the way down to the edge. The downside, though, let's hit O. O shows us what this graduated filter is affecting. The downside, of course, though, is it's hitting all of these, too. Our horizon doesn't fit nicely along this flat line because, of course, this is a valley. There's a couple of things we could do to fix that, and we will in just a minute. But let's finish. Let's ignore the dark parts of the mountain for a minute, and let's just kind of continue to work on this. Let's take texture and clarity down a little bit. Let's really soften those clouds and give them that really smooth cotton candy feel. And I'm going to bump saturation up a little bit, and I'm going to come back up to the temp and the tint and see what happens if we just add a little bit more red to the scene. Like that. It's pretty nice. And let's just bring this down further and see if we get more out of the sky or not. Not so much. So now our challenge of peeling it off the mountains. Let's go to range mask and let's try luminance. what the range mask allows, and I just did a Monday Minute on this, it allows you to limit your mask, any one of these local area adjustments as a mask, it allows you to limit it by a brightness value or a color. We're doing luminance, so that's a brightness value. Let's say we only want the brighter portion of this image to be affected. So, and we can say show luminance mask. And notice now that there's no red on the mountains. It's peeled off the mountains. It's only on the brighter regions of this image, which happen to be in the sky. I might have taken it too far. Let's just keep backing it up a little bit, like so. So somewhere in there, turn it back off, is the sky is nice. And if you're not sure if you really peeled it off what you need, you can turn the whole filter off and watch the parts of the mountains. Now, they're still getting hit a little bit, but it's not bad. It's mostly the snow getting hit there because the snow is a bit brighter than the rest of it. We could continue to kind of refine that by getting our erase tool. Yeah. Where'd my pin go? Missing my pin for a second. Hang on. What's happening? Let's say done. Come back in. I'm looking for the pin so that I can grab my mask. Where'd my graduated filter go? Did I? Ah, there it is. Oh, did I? I had turned it off. That's embarrassing. Okay, so here it is. And so what I was going to do is go to the brush within the mask, and I am going to hit erase and just kind of quickly paint on these guys here, just to get it off them as well. Now you could argue, I had this thought, you could argue that maybe you shouldn't even bother doing the luminance mask at all. Maybe just brush it off in general and see how it looks without even doing the mask. So that's another thing. But I really like to try the mask often because if you can get it to work well, it saves you a lot of time. And it didn't take me a lot of time to put that mask on. Does that make sense? So we're hitting some of those mountains a little bit more than I want, but for the purpose of this, I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now, let's go to new graduated filter. So I've got one, there's a little pin for it sitting right there in the middle. I'm going to drag up from the bottom. And again, it comes out with that last use where texture and clarity are at the very bottom. Again, it kind of is an interesting look. I almost want to use it to, but not here, not now. So I'm going to come up across all of this. And I'm going to double click effect to zero this all out. And I'm going to bring exposure up. And I'm going to bring shadows up a little bit more. So again, I'm really just doing what I was doing in the basic panel, except now I am using the local area adjustments, of course, to affect just the portion of the image that I want. And maybe grab the brush, no masking this time, no range masking, and I'm just going to make sure I've brushed up into the higher reaches of this as well. So, kind of up to you how much you apply, because again, you could have some of this stuff falls in the shade. It's being shaded either by another ridge or the trees, or maybe there's clouds to the right more. And so it seems acceptable to me to be a little bit darker. When you are brushing within a graduated filter, remember I dragged up from the bottom, so the effect is 100% until you get to the center line where it goes from 100 to 50, and then it goes 50 to 0 and fades out. So if you're brushing, check your flow. Because if I brush on 100 up here, that's going to be much higher than this region down here, right? This is 0. And then all of a sudden I'm brushing on 100% of the effect. That's how you can think of the flow. So if I'm going to be brushing in this region, I should be in the neighborhood of about 25%-ish. That's going to match what's already drawn in that area, and if I want to go up a little bit more to continue to match. And same thing over here. If I needed to brush in here, I would need to be at about 75%, and then of course 50 to 100. I hope that makes sense. So there I am. I like this, but here's what I'm going to come back to real quick. I'm going to come back to this graduated filter, and if you can't remember which one you're working on, the top one or the bottom one, just hit that O key, and it will show you where you're affected. And this looks pretty good. I could even erase it from here a little bit, but I want to just, you know, turn this a little more red too, see if it can reflect a bit more of that sky and look lovely. I think that looks nice. And now I'm getting close to being done. I just want this rock, this is El Cap, and it's just massive, and it's being hit by some of that light, but not enough. So I'm gonna get a brush, local area adjustment, just the brush, and exposure up, shadows up, a little warm, a little pinker, and a little more texture, a little more clarity. And I'm just eyeballing those. I moved them all to the right, a skid. And now I'm gonna come over and I'm just gonna paint on here and see if I see anything happening. Yes, it's getting a little bit brighter. I want this to stand out as much as it did in my memory. It is a massive 3,000 foot granite monolith. I think it's 3,000 feet, it's about there. So I really want that to show up. And once I've painted, then I can come back to my little, I was gonna call them skid marks, but that's probably not the best thing to call them right now. But come back to these and say, well, all right, maybe I can go a little further with texture, or I can go a little further with exposure, or maybe I overdid it and come back down. And maybe just, let's bring up this a little bit more. I really kind of want it to pick up the glow from the sky and really show that. And then I could lower that flow a little bit, and even though these are backlit, these are, you know, the sun isn't hitting these directly, I do want them to show up just a bit more. There could have been a little bit more reflection off of El Cap, and I want them to show up just a touch more. There we go. I'm pretty happy with this, but this couple of clumps of white snow right here in the bottom, I am going to, it's bothering me. So I'm gonna come up like I said I was originally and come just past those. Now that kind of starts to lose the bottom of these. Now I know we don't have them to begin with, the bottom of them, but this one at least kind of goes behind a bush, and this one goes behind a bush as well, so it doesn't feel so abrupt. It feels thoughtful down there. But you know what, let's come in. That one scraggly right in the corner is bothering me, and let's come up and let me see what I think about this. And many of you watching right now, at least in chat, you've watched lots of our videos, and you know we're a fan of crop to whatever tells the story the best. I have it on custom crop right now. Whatever aspect ratio works. If you're going to print and you need to match to a frame or something that you've bought at Michael's, well then yes, pay attention over here and decide one that's going to work for you. But otherwise, crop however you like and however tells the story best. Come down just back a little bit past those snow clumps. And then I'm going to sit back and take a look at this, remind myself what it looked like at the beginning and at the end, and say I'm pretty happy with that. I might, if I was really working this over, take it into Photoshop to do a little bit more sharpening on El Cap and over here. And let's see what we have for time at the end of this. Maybe I'll come back and show that. But I think that looks pretty good. All right, so Toby, what are the bright areas above the mountains on the right? You might be looking, right, Kevin asked that, right along here, and it's just, the sun is just about to peak up over here on the right-hand side. So that is giving those trees a very strong backlit glow. Plus they are all snowy and crystallized, so they really are glowing with the sun coming through all of that bits of snow on them. So I think that's what you're asking there, Kevin. I hope that's right. And you know, I could dampen this down a little bit more. We saw that if we hit the J key, nope, it's not clipped. We only have just a tiny bit of blue clipping, black clipping right down here. So I could try to bring that down a bit more there, but it doesn't bother me. So I'm going to leave it right there. And now let's take a look at some of yours. Let me see. Let's go back to grid. And you all downloaded them to where? I thought I got the folder already. So I'm going to come over here to File Request. I'm going to right click on it and say Synchronize Folder. Oh boy, that's not right. Hold on just a sec. I'm going to say Import. You haven't sent in 538. And these pictures are sitting, on Dropbox. File Requests. Raw Exchange. Here they are. I'm going to build one-to-one previews. I'm going to uncheck don't import suspected duplicates because I don't think that'll do anything. I'm not going to apply any presets to your edits. These are your pictures you're sending in now and no keywords. So, and I'm just adding them from where they are. So I'm going to hit import. Now, if you're watching this and you're struggling to get your pictures in, if you're watching this live, don't worry. I will synchronize this folder again before we get to another one of the photos. So the next photo that I would like to work on is the Iceland church. So just keep that in mind. But let's see here. First up, we have Andrew. Andrew, you went black and white with a scene. You thought Ansel Adams, Yosemite National Park, Ansel Adams, and I love the trees and the snow in that black and white. But what happens here in this image is that with that and the bringing up the brighter areas so that you have that nice snow, we've lost all of the detail in the sky. So if you were going to do that, I'd be on board, but I think I would really kind of crop in and minimize the sky and maybe tell a story that is just about the valley itself. And this is a question we get on workshops a lot. Hey, my current exposure, the landscape looks great, but the sky looks crummy or it's blown out. And the answer is, minimize the sky. That's the easy answer. You can also do multiple exposures bracketing and things like that. But I would come in tight like that. Maybe we want to include all of that tree, not cut it off so sloppily, so we get that kind of feeling there. And I'd like to see a little bit more crispness back there. So I'd do something like that. All right. That's cool, though. I love to see a black and white, and I think we're going to run into a couple more from you all. David Newbold, you did a custom matte border. Very nice, very nice. And I think you went with a little bit more of a subtle valley lightning, and I have to say it looks quite good to me. The sky looks good, too. The only thing I'm getting is just a little bit of, on my monitor, and this is always tricky, but on my monitor, I feel like we have just a little bit more green to the sky through here. And we have just a little bit more color on these rocks than I would like. See how they look just a tiny bit splotchy there? Well, actually, when you zoom in a little bit better, they look quite fine. Looks fine right now to me. Now, I'm going to take that back and say, really, the only thing that I would watch out for in this edit is a little bit of the green. You might have pushed the saturation up just a little bit more than I would have. But otherwise, I think you've done a nice job. That looks like the same. And Doug submitted this one. Doug P., I think this looks a lot like mine. And look, you even did the cropping. Came in. Like my cropping, and I think you have a little bit, maybe you left it a little bit wider. Quite nice. I think there's a little bit more room to get a little more color in the sky if you wanted to, but you did a nice job there. Linda, I think you can push these things a lot further than you did. Let's see your crop, because compared to, what's an easy way to go back to mine? I don't know. Let's go here. So here's Doug's, which I think is a similar crop to mine. And then here's Linda's, which you came in. And Linda, I think you can certainly make an argument for that. There's not a whole lot that happens over here on the left after El Cap. And in some ways, it starts to diminish. I think we saw this with Andrew's, where once we pulled in tight, really you start to feel that valley. And that's making me rethink. And that's one of the things you see on our weekly show, which there's another weekly show tomorrow. If you're watching this and you haven't watched that, tune in tomorrow at 2 p.m. You know, there are often so many different ways to crop a single image. And I think in a big, vast scene like that, it's very, very true. And I think, Linda, I really like coming in a little bit tighter and giving El Cap just a little bit more prominence in the shot. I think you could even come in a little bit on the right too. Let me see that for a moment. If we come in on the right, now this larger, heavier cloud, heavier, it's not really too heavy, really comes out from the corner. And that's kind of pleasing and satisfying to have things line up that way. But I think I would have brought the valley up a little bit more. Lisa Moore has hers. She didn't touch the crop. I think your sky looks really nice. And I think your landscape looks pretty nice too. A lot of times I glance up at the small navigator window because it's easier for me to see kind of whole shots. And I tell you, this feels just a touch dark. And you know what? I might go back to my own and say that as well. It feels a touch darker than you get down here. So I might try to balance that out a little bit more. And I might, I don't know, I feel like this foreground has just a tiny bit more color to it than I like. Might drop the saturation just -9. What does that look like? I think either way. Nice. Thank you, Lisa. Mary. This is where it gets hard. No offense, Mary. You've definitely edited this, but how much have you edited it compared to mine? I should have mine in this folder too. I think your edits have been very subtle, and that's not bad, but I'd love to see a little bit more detail over in this area. I'd love to see those shadows brightened up a bit more. Don't be afraid to do that. This is a JPEG, so it's not responding quite as well to it, but nice. All right. Nils brightened it a good bit. Gosh, I like this. I see some of the same issues that David Newbold had in that maybe there's just this tiniest bit of color tinting through here that I don't love. And I think I would like this to be a tiny bit crispier. But otherwise, you know, overall, this actually feels just a tiny bit slanted towards the green. I'm going to bring it back to the right just a bit. If I say just a lot, sorry. So I think that it's nice. It's nice. This one feels a little bit brighter, more pastel-y than many of the other ones, including my own. And I like that. Becky Miller. Very nice. Again, what I'm getting from a lot of them, and you can see down here in the thumbnails, is a lot of you didn't push the valley as much as I would. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I want to see more detail down in there. And if you're not going to go more detail, then I might try to go even warmer to really kind of have that feel of pre-dawn washing over the valley. Nice. And Robert. Forehand. Now, Robert played with light here a little bit. And you, Robert, I've seen some of your work. You've pushed this a little bit further than I would. Like up here, this is pretty dramatic. And the difference from here to here is very strong. I don't go that far, but I love the playing with the light over here. I'm pretty sure you added either brushed or filter, and it gives, this feels real to me, even though it's not really in that original, is it? But it feels like that sun was just starting to kiss these rocks over here, and I like that. And you brought some of that brightness in over there as well. So cool, nice. I hope that was helpful to you all. Is that all of them? Oh, we got a couple more here at the end. Jody, nice overall. Kind of brightened, very similar to a lot of the ones we've seen. I like it. I think you've done a nice job. And David, this is interesting. You very strong vignette, and it feels very flat, I want to say, which I don't know. There's the green in the trees that shows up to me more, but I would love to see more contrast. I'm a more contrasty kind of guy. And I do use vignettes from time to time, but I want to use them in such a way that it helps focus the eye on the subject and not have them so dark that it draws your eye away from what you want to look at. So I would be more subtle with the vignettes around the edges there. And Terry, nice. And you did crop in. Oh, you left a little bit of that. That's fine. It's your call. But you did feel that you cropped in a little bit, and I'm feeling that. I like that, and I think an overall kind of nice general good look. And now, Barb's. Barb definitely pushed this further than I would. This looks like you've run it through an HDR filter. And I have to say that parts of the valley look pretty cool that way. But when we get into the sky, we have this kind of texture to it. Wow, I mean, look at that over there. Actually, is this a complete... No, it is the sky, isn't it? That's pretty amazing. All of that clouds and all of those details were there. But it's when you really push it that it starts to come out. Now notice, we still have this completely washed out area. And I don't think in any of the images, even my own, if we bring exposure or highlights all the way down, will we hit that? Okay, I can't believe it's 640 and I'm still on the first image. I'm sorry. We're going to go a little fast here. So that bothers me. And it doesn't in many of the other ones we've seen, even though, you know, it's bright there. But because it's not that much different than the rest, it fits in a little bit. So, and the other thing you have to watch out for when you push HDRs is just a little bit of haloing around the edges. But there certainly are parts of this where the texture, the rock of El Cap there, look really, really nice. Very cool. Thank you everybody who submitted. Let us move on to the next image. What did I say we're going to do next? The Iceland church? I think I said the Iceland church. All right. We're going to be a little bit faster with this one. This one's fairly simple here. I'm going to bring up the crop tool first. And when I look at this, I'm looking at the image in each of these little squares, and I'm noticing that kind of above the church, not a whole lot keeps happening in the clouds, right? So I don't need all of that up there. Let's come down. Somewhere in this neighborhood, I mean, I could come almost all the way down like this. And then it takes this image and much more widescreen, wide format image. And I like that. So somewhere around there, I think I'm going to stop. And that also then gives us this kind of third of landscape, third with the church sitting over here on the right, and a third more of sky up above the steeple. Could come in a little bit more. I'm watching where this corner of the cloud comes out to kind of decide where I want to put that. That's nice. Now, I do often crop first because remember in Lightroom, you're like, oh, I messed up. Of course, at any time you can go back and come back and get more of that. Now, I'm going to hit auto to see what Lightroom thinks. It makes it all a bit brighter, and that's honestly probably not the direction I wanted to go. I want this to look a little bit more moody. So I'm going to undo that. And one other thing I'm going to do before I really get into this is I'm going to come down, remembering this time to come to lens correction and turn both of those on. It does not know what I used. I think I had a Panasonic, not even in the list sometimes. So that's okay. But I do want to come into the transform panel because this church doesn't feel quite as upright as it should. I'm shooting with a wider angle lens, 25 millimeter, and I'm shooting from a low up. So there's a little bit of distortion happening, not a ton. Let's see what auto does. Terrible, absolutely terrible. So I undo that. Let's go to guided. And I'm going to take this edge here and draw a line on it, following what should be a straight up and down line. I'm going to do one on the back of the church where this wall is. And I'm drawing it not straight up and down, but along the wall that should be straight up and down. So then Lightroom goes, oh, I need to fix it. Gosh. It needs definitely another one over here, or maybe I should have done only one over there. Delete that one. There, that looks a little bit more realistic to me. Does it to you? And then Gee, I'm struggling with what should be a horizontal line here. Across the doorway? No, see, that's not right. I should have practiced this. Not here either. That's too much distortion. I just need it to be, could maybe even go into R. Bring it back like that. Right now the church looks like it's leaning forward more than I want. And I want to bring it back. I think that looks good. So we've used those two to get it to stand up straight, and then I just simply went back to the crop tool and pulled that bottom corner down just a touch to get it to stand up a little bit straighter. Now, I've got this fluff bit right here and this right here. Those are bothering me. I'll come back and fix those soon, but I'd like this grass to be a little bit greener, this down here to be a little bit brighter. You know what though? Hold on. Let's do basic. And let's just brighten it a tiny bit. I want contrast. I want to really see those clouds darker and the whites whiter. So I'm going to bring that up a bit. Highlights, I'm just going to move them for a second. What happens here? I think I like them a little bit brighter. Shadows, I'm going to go down darker. I wanted more contrast. Moving the highlights towards the highlights, moving the shadows towards the shadows is going to increase contrast even further. So I want that. Whites, I'm going to move up a little bit. And if I'm not auto doing this, if I'm doing this myself, what I'm watching for is the histogram up here. And my goal is to kind of have it spread very close to each edge, just kind of kissing those edges just a little bit. Not all images look good that way, but it's on most images, that's a good kind of rule of thumb. And somewhere over here. And you can always hit the J key and see if you are getting any areas too bright or too dark with your slider moving. And I don't need to get that, I don't need to have it so dark in the walls there. Textures a little bit, clarity a little bit. The dehaze, not going to touch. Vibrance and saturation, I might bring up the vibrance just a little, but not really. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Now that was my general global changes. I'm going to hit my graduated filter, drag up from the bottom, somewhere around here, and zero it out by double-clicking effect, and drag up just shadows first. And you know what's nice about that is I don't even have to do any complicated masking because there's no shadows in the sky, really. So notice how nicely it stays just on the grass. If you look carefully, when I go way up, you can see some happening over here. But really, not bad. So I'll do that. And you know what else I can do? I can bring the green down to just kind of add a little bit of richness to the green grass. I want this color. I want there to be this really nice contrast. Green grass, red roof, and then almost this monochromatic, menacing sky. That's my goal here. All right, so all I did was graduated filter across the bottom. Now I'm going to do new, graduated filter across the sky, come down from the top. And of course, if we hit O, we see where it's affecting. And this is where zero it out. And let's just bring the overall contrast down a little bit. Texture could go down so the clouds get a little bit softer, or you could go up and they get really crispy and moody. That's either way. Clarity up a little. Dehaze. There is no haze, but dehaze on clouds can be a nice effect. I'm going to leave it as is. Saturation, I'm not going to go this way because it just kind of starts to bring out some funny colors in the clouds. I'll come down a little bit, although there's not really much to bring out either. So that all looks good, except for the fact that the top of my church is getting hit. My church. So range mask, color. I'm going to get the dropper, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click and drag through a block of the sky, selecting this color range. And did you just see it peel off the church? Let's hit O, and look, it is still in the windows up there, but it's not on the roof. And it is a little bit up on the steeple as well, or the actual cross up on the steeple. So that's an issue. But in general, it did a pretty good job. And if I wanted to, I could lower this, and it's going to limit itself. Look at that. Oh, I like it when it does the work for me. Look at it pull off. Look how that green disappears. from the cross and everywhere except for those windows, which I don't really care about the windows. That's pretty handy. The next feature I want Lightroom to add is a reverse mask. So instantly I could reverse this because I would love to be able to have this roof be brighter easily. So let's close that. You got to be careful. To me, it feels like there's just a little bit of a noticeable line now. Well, that actually doesn't look too bad. All right, I'm going to get my brush tool real quick. I'm going to start brushing on this roof here. And I'm going to be pretty sloppy in my brushing because one, I have auto mask turned on, which means it's looking for the edges. As long as I'm mostly inside the lines of what I want to brush, it won't go outside of it too much. And let's come over here to this roof here and brush on a little bit as well. And let's hit O, so that green slime goes away. If you do with O on, if you do Shift O, it will change the overlay that you're using. So if there's another color that's better, but neon slime green is usually best for me because that's usually not in the images I'm working on, so I know it's the mask showing me where it is and it's not an effect. All right, but turn it back off. And I want this roof to be red and poppin'. So I'm gonna go right on the tint. I'm gonna go right on the saturation. And I'm realizing there's another way I could have done this too. And I'm gonna go up on the texture and the brightness too, so that that stands out a little bit more. And I said I was gonna be quicker on these other images, but I want the white stucco to really be nice and white as well. I want this church not to look dingy at all. It wasn't a dingy church. It was beautiful, standing against these storm clouds. Lots of allegories and metaphorical things to say about that. So let's just paint all of that. Let's hit O real quick to see how good or bad a paint job I did. I'm realizing my flow is turned down a little bit lower than I like. So that's why the green is so faint. My flow was low. And now, take it back off. And let's just bring this up a little bit more. Saturation down. I really want this to be a white and red, not a beige and red, but a white and red church standing against the storm clouds. Now, I've brushed on a little bit on the sloppy side. And you can see in here, it gets a little darker. So be careful about that. Be careful that there aren't any noticeable brushing strokes. And you know what? This is such a nice straight line. You could click here, hold down Shift on the keyboard, click down here, and it's going to draw a straight line down there for you. I didn't even do any parts of the church over here, did I? So let's just kind of paint this on a little bit more drastically. Right bracket keys make the brush bigger. Left bracket key makes it smaller. Those are the keys in the top right corner of most keyboards. Bracket, the little square ones, or the curly cube, but the brackets. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I said I was going to fix these guys down here. I'm going to hit the Q tool. Looks like I have the brush still, but now I'm in the clone heel, and I'm going to click on that dandelion and do a little magic weed pulling. And this guy right here, it mostly bothers me because it's just so close to the edge and it's bright. Grabs my eye away from the scene. So I'm going to click that. Lightroom samples from the middle of the wall. That's terrible. No. So let me help it by dragging over into the grass. This is where I'd like you to sample from, please, Lightroom. And maybe come over here. You want to be careful that, maybe over here. I'm watching that, it isn't terribly different from where it is. So there we go. Snapped into play. There is this, we know it, you and I know it. This is a secret between us. But you can see that there is that piece duplicated. Just that little one. There's another little white one next to it. You see that? So if you wanted to, say, make sure that nobody in their right mind could ever tell, you could move it again to someplace else, or you could just grab again with another and come in across there and sample from someplace else. And now, because you're overlaying from two different places, you kind of get rid of that duplication there. So, Harry, I changed the overlay color to green. First off, just pressing the O key turns the overlay on or off, and then Shift O allows you to rotate through the different overlay colors. And as I said, I like Slimer green. Okay, I think I'm done with this. I didn't paint the back across, and I was a little splotchy on the roof. So if this was an image that I was going to print, and also these guys out here, don't forget these. I don't mind so much the hoop, you don't need to paint that, but the blocks that are on either side of the entrance to the church itself, that I would take some time to make sure they match the rest of this, because looking at that now, they're quite a bit different. And I also have just a little bit of a sloppy painting out here. Let me at least show you how to fix that, because I can't let that go. So turn O, get O back on. See the green there? I can either hit the erase key, and that's what I need to do probably, or you can hold down Alt, and suddenly the brush turns into an eraser. I'm holding down the Alt key. Windows, I think it's Option. And now I can come in here and I can brush. Again, auto mask is actually off, so I have to be careful. If I go to the eraser here, now I can turn auto mask on, flow up higher, and I can be a little bit sloppier. Oh, yeah, auto mask failing me a little bit. I say that because can you see it got into the steeple just a bit. I erased more than I wanted to, but let's see what this looks like. Oh yeah, look at that. Looks like a big old dinge smudge mark. That's terrible. Let's undo, 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 undo. Gosh, why isn't that coming back? Oh well. I wouldn't let that go. But in the name of time and sanity, let's let it go for now. Let's go look at some of your images of the church. And I said I would resynchronize these. Let's just see if anybody has turned any in, why they've waited. 3, quick synchronization. The next one I'll do is the gentleman in Cuba. So, Jason Troyer just got his in. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import, but we don't have any church ones to talk about. So we're going to come back to the raw exchange, and we're going to look at these church ones. Laurie from our Alaska trip. Laurie, how are you doing? Laurie, I think you've done a really nice job here. Yours looks very similar to how I remember mine looking from a few moments ago. I think you might have brightened the foreground even a little bit more. And what I noticed with that is just a little bit more of the textures and like lichen or mosses that are on those rocks. I like that. I do have that leaning feeling though, so watch out for that. But I think you've done a very similar job to what I did. And that means I like it. Yeah. All right, Linda cropped in again and came in from the left and centered the church much more than the other ones. Let's look at Laurie's again, Laurie's real quick, because that's kind of your widescreen. And then here is chopped in, and I like it. I think there is an argument for and against the steeple now being basically smack dab in the middle. But it's pretty nice. Leaning as well, I would fix that. Robert Forehand, who did the Yosemite that looked like he did some painting with light and pushed it pretty far. Another example of how far, how artistic you could go. It looks like you have, let's remind ourselves so you added a good bit of light coming out of this region over here, which looks like it could happen, and is hitting and enveloping the church, and even coming down across the front of the church there. It's nice. I think we have a lot of dark space up here that I don't think really helps that story at all. I think with that one we can come in further. But that's pretty cool. And this is almost a selective color, because really the only color we have in here besides the yellow of the sunbeam is the roof of the church as well. So I think that's an interesting way to go. Ryan submitted this one and also kind of went with the same idea I did, but took everything except for the church dark. So it really feels like there is a spot of light. We're not sure where it's coming from, but it is lighting up the church, and it's pretty cool. The only thing that I would do is it feels a little unnatural for none of the roof to be getting as bright as well, and also the steeple up here. So I'd watch for that and make sure that it wasn't all of the white down here. Maybe it stopped, like just the God beam coming on the door area and along the side, or I would go ahead and get more of it up. And Sandra has submitted this one, which has, isn't it cool? One image can have so many different feelings to it. This one just looks like a very peaceful, nice day, and I like it. I will say that I feel like you've pushed up in the clouds a little bit further, and you can see how they can get some artifacting and some additional colors. Well, it hadn't fully loaded, so it wasn't as bad as it looked, but it's still pushed a little bit too far up there that I'd be careful about. But gosh, pushing it, there is a lot of cool detail in that cloud. There's some really neat textures and swirls to all of that. Very cool. All right. And Sharon has this one, which I have to say, after looking at Sandra's, it feels a little flat, a little bit, muted, but I also think is another way, and another very nice way to go with this image. Again, I'm not saying this on all of them, so I'm not being fair there, but on a lot of them, I would come in, unless you've done something like Sandra and really shown some more of that texture up there, because it feels like I shot it with just a little too much sky. And Tom went black and white, which I feel like looks just really nice and clean. And I'm torn. I think there's a lot to love with those red roofs, but it is kind of a more muted red, and this black and white here feels so clean and nice that I really think it's a very viable option for this image. One thing to watch for, I don't think this is something you've done, Tom. I think there was a light or something here. I've noticed on a couple of them. It's just a little funny bright right here. So I just kind of balance that out. But otherwise, this is a very nice, very clean image. Looks good. And do we have any sneaking at the end? Yes, we do. Jody's here too as well. Very nice. I think you've blended, I think the sky is kind of a nice setting. Not too pushed. A little noisy. And if you wanted to, one of the things that you could do is, with that local adjustment, you could reduce the noise level. Let me show you one other thing to do with mine before we move on to another picture that I should have mentioned. I was doing a lot of masking or a lot of brushing on the roof. The other thing I could do in here, of course, is come to the HSL in color panel, and I could grab the red and look at how, without any masking, any funny business at all, any work on my part other than grabbing the slider, I can greatly change the color of that roof, from, of course, saturation of it to the hue of it. You can see the orange affects it as well, to the luminance, how bright that roof is, or dark. So you could go either way without any masking. In this case, it works really nicely because it is a pretty consistent color. If you're on the HSL panel, you got the little donut pickers. So you could grab this, click on the roof, and now watch both orange and red are moving equally, because Lightroom sees the color you clicked on, and to it, it's a split orange and red and orange color. So you can really adjust that as well. So don't always feel like you have to do local area adjustments and brushing and masking. If it is a selective color that you want to work on, and really it's just adjusting that color, then use the HSL in the color panel as well. All right. Adam says, hey, Toby and Roy. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for following along. David has a suggestion of reducing the highlights to the left of the church. Seems to draw the eye away from the church, kind of pushing being blown out to me. And I think, David, you might mean right down in this region or up here. I'm not sure which, but this is definitely a good bit different, and it's kind of jarring, that change. So you might want to brush on in here and see if you can get that to be a little bit more even toned like the rest of the sky. All right, let's work on our gentleman cigar salesman from Cuba. Okay. So he was sitting outside a cigar shop. I think they pay these guys to do that. And smoking a cigar. Uh, and I love his kind of look, dirty cowboy hat. He's a little bit older, smoking a cigar, older watch on that's pretty beat up. But we got some dude back here in jean shorts just walking. So very bothered by that. Also, just kind of bothered by this space over here. It's not really telling the story. I can't see stacks of cigars. These might be drying racks. I can't remember, or they might be the rolling racks or something like that. Oh, they're press, aren't they? Yeah, but see, I remember that. Struggle to remember that, but it doesn't tell. There's no real story there. So I'm gonna hit my R key, and I'm just gonna start to come in from the left, get past that stuff, get past Joe tourist back there, and maybe come in all the way like that. And then now it feels a little like, why do I need this dirty edge of the wall there? So I'm going to come in from that side, just past it, somewhere around there. And I like that. If I wanted to say, okay, I'm following some custom convention, well, let's try a 1-to-1. Well, it actually ended up being almost exactly a 1-to-1. If you want to do an 8x10, not a horizontal, but a vertical, I could hit the X key. And now I'm shooting for an 8x10. I could come in somewhere around here. Don't love that because then we have a glimpse of the watch and the hand comes in awkwardly. So I'm going to go back to that 1x1. And again, I really like to crop early on. I think that's a good way to do things. Okay. Looks pretty good. And this is an image that I don't think really there's any colors telling a story. So he's not wearing anything colorful. The cigar doesn't have any red embers at the end. The watch is gold, but you know what? I think this is a nice case for a black and white. It kind of gets to that timeless feel. Don't know when this is. Could have been, in the 50s in Cuba when black and white was much more prevalent. So right there, that's how I decided to go black and white. Let's hit the auto button in black and white. And it helpfully tries to make everything a bit more brighter. It really brightens up the background. It's like, here, let me show you this dark, dingy area. No, we don't want that. That was the shadows. So I'm going to bring those down and look at the background just kind of start to melt away, fade away. I like that. I could go pretty dramatically down. I think that's good. I'd like his face to be a little bit brighter. So what happens when we bring the highlights up a little bit more? It's more of the whole image than I want. You see the hat comes up more than I want. We start to lose detail. The window, a lot of it starts to come up. So I'm going to leave it right around there. Texture. Now, oftentimes with portraits, you don't want to go right with texture. That brings out all of the blemishes, all of the wrinkles. But sorry, old guy. That's what cigar smoking does to you. I'm sorry to tell you. And I'm going to increase these wrinkles. I want to see his age, his wisdom, let's say that way nicely. And clarity a little bit too. Clarity can very quickly go too far. Too far in my opinion. But somewhere in there, and you have to watch the whole image because his face, honestly, around 49 clarity doesn't look too bad, but I don't love the neck. It becomes too much. So I'm going to back that off a bit. I want the neck not to be so wrinkly. I don't know what to say other than that wrinkly. Okay. I also feel like the highlights are still a little too high in that hat up there. Back down. Okay. Looks good. You know what I forgot? Lens corrections. But again, it doesn't remember, and I don't think it's here. And it was shot at 32 millimeters. Not too worried about it, so that's okay. This happens when the image comes back in. It's a DNG now, and so at some point Lightroom forgot what lens. All right. I want a little more clarity of the face. I want a little more detail there, and I also want a little bit less in the background. So what are we going to do? We're going to move on to our local area adjustments. We're going to get the effect tool, we are going to lower the exposure. I'm in the brush, sorry. We're going to lower our highlights and our shadows. And let's lower our texture and clarity. This is for painting on the background. And I'm just going to start to paint back here a bit. Just kind of mellow everything out. Say, hey, we don't need to see as much as we're seeing. Be careful if you're going to go to print, or if you look at this on another image, you might want to adjust your brightness a little bit, because if you make kind of a region that looks really dark to you on certain monitors, certain brightness, or when you go to print, it might be bright enough that people see your sloppy dark brush stroke and just notice it as a brush stroke. So be careful that it really does look like just a shadowy area back there. And you can always hit O to see how you've done painting wise, and just kind of come up into that bright area. This is where AutoMask is struggling a little. It doesn't want to paint on those brighter areas. It thinks it's different. So you could turn AutoMask on. You're going to find that it's going to paint in those areas more easily, but then of course it's going to paint on the things you don't want more easily, like the edge of the hat. So you just have to watch out for that. It avoided that pole back there as well when it was on. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's hit O, turn that back off. Let's do a quick before and after. Really like the background starting to melt away. This is just a weird artifact of some sort. That's bothering me. So I'm going to get the Q tool, and I'm just going to kind of try to get rid of that as quickly as possible. Find up if there's any lines, you want to kind of get them to match up. I don't know if I made that better. Let's feather that a little bit more and maybe lower its opacity just a bit, just to soften that healing. I think that's good. You could even come in there with another brush, texture and clarity down, just kind of brush back there just to get it to mellow and blur out a little bit more. And if you wanted to, real quick, right click on it, duplicate. Now you got two blur brushes sitting on top of each other, duplicating that effect. So that's a quick way to really increase the strength of something that you've done. Let's get the radial filter. Let's throw it over his face. Invert, so it's affecting his face. Zero it out. Texture up. Clarity up a bit more. This is where I can now really get the wrinkles in the face, but it's not affecting the neck because I didn't put it on the neck. I don't want to overdo it too much. And I do wish there was a little bit less glare in the glasses, but that's really hard to get rid of unless you have some clear area to pull from one eye or the other. But in both cases, we have glare across those glasses. So that looks pretty good. I might take the brush as part of this. This brush is within this radial gradient, and I could brush down the hand a little bit just to get a little bit more detail on the hand as well. So it feels like my depth of field was just a tiny bit more than it was. What do we think? I see a little glimpse of something back here that I'm going to get rid of. And maybe even this right here. And this is where you really want to watch out. Notice how you can accidentally kind of shift that line of this one edge of the board. And you want to make sure they line up there nicely like that. I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And I might go to effects and add a little bit more vignette. This is where you could get pretty strong with a vignette here. Just to kind of circle our cowboy cigar smoking Cuban a little bit more. Good. Let's look at yours. Adam went with a black and white as well. Very strong, grungy look. You might have pushed it a little bit further. Well, you did. You pushed it further than I would. But I think it does look cool. I would watch out for that edge there. I think that's distracting. Just the white on that dark, right down too close to him. And, I wish I had avoided it and shooting it. But pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, Andrew. Andrew, you cropped in past that guy over there, and also I think darkened it a little bit. Nice. Again, same thing over here. And I think this is nice. It has a soft feel to it, and the color works very well too. But I am, I think, a little partial to the black and white. All right, Lisa came in and cropped out that on the right and the left. Also, you fixed that little spot up there as well. And I think there was one in the corner you fixed. I didn't. I'm good. Nice job, Lisa. And I think this nice tight shot is edited quite well. And I have to say, I feel like I'm really feeling the texture of his face without feeling like you pushed it even as far as I did. And it could be I've just already forgotten what mine looks like, but I think you've done a nice job there. Hat here is a little bright. Now watch that. Just a little. Keeps pulling my eye up. Robert Forehand went with this very muted tone. And I think this works really, really well. The only things to say is, one, I feel like I really see this spot right now. Although, again, I didn't fix it on mine, so I'm not going to bust you too much for that. And I also feel like there is a little bit of out of focusness here that I'm not sure what's going on. Does it feel like that to anybody else? It feels like almost a brush was over this with an out of focus. But I really like this muted tone. And I do, though, would get rid of this person over here. Maybe come in a little bit more. I'm also torn, though, because I like the space. There is, you could keep this space and argue that this negative, darker space nicely is offset by him as a unit. So you don't have to come in so tight like everybody else did. And then Tom. Tom, you went pretty bright, pretty vibrant. And I feel like one of the things that hits me is the end of the cigar feels really in focus. And quite nice. Quite nice. It might be a little bit redder and yellower toned than I would push, but that's pretty cool stuff. And I think we have one hiding at the end here. Brooke. Nice. You've cropped in. You've got rid of that dude over there. You cleaned up over here as others have done. You left a little bit more space on the right. I think you cleaned up here as well. Nice job. It also looks like you might have tried to fix some of what was going on in the glasses. And I'm not sure that really works so well. This looks a little funny here. But otherwise, again, another kind of just very realistic, not heavily edited, pleasing image. Did we look at, I feel like, let me synchronize again real quick. Any new ones come in? Where did Jason's go? No new ones. So let's go to previous import real quick. There's Adam's. There's Lisa's. Jason? I thought, oh, it was this one, isn't it? That was yours, Jason. Yep, that one. Okay. Very nice. You did paint on there as well. All right, but we got to move on because I said this show was only going to be an hour. And it's already much longer than that. Last one we're going to work on. And we're going to do it fairly quickly. Is everybody good? Horseshoe Bend. Adam says he actually increased the glare in the... All right. Hey, if you're watching this, give it a quick thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. That's a nice way to thank me for my time. And if you're not subscribed, even if you're a pen member, it's really nice if you hit that subscribe button along with the bell so you'll be notified of future videos. All right. This is a fun one. I'm going to do it fairly quickly. This is Horseshoe Bend outside Page, Arizona, a place that has become very, very popular. And you're going to see me do a lot of the same. I'm going to hit auto. And I tell you what, auto jump starts it in a really nice direction. Let's look at that. Look, it really brought out the clouds and just a little bit more contrast from the landscape itself. But you know what I don't like? This was sunset. And it looks like Lightroom doesn't know that. Lightroom is like, this looks like it's midday. I'm going to try to make it blue. I'm going to grab my white balance and just start to slide it to the right and really start to warm everything up. To me, when I was standing here, I remember incredibly rich tones in the rocks and just a beautiful, soft yellow glow to the sky. So I moved that up to 7,400 Kelvin from, it was somewhere around there. Look how blue that looks now. So part of it is my memory of being there, but part of it is also how I would like it to look. And I would like it to look even warmer. Where was I? 70? I think you can go even a little bit further. All right. So I've done that. Now, oh yeah, let's do lens corrections. All right, it was already in there. Good, somehow. Overall exposure, I think it was kind of perfect where it was. Highlights all the way down to -84. I don't like to push them further than that. There's a point of diminishing returns, so I like that. Let's see what happens if we take the blacks down a little bit more. Sounds good. Texture, yes. Clarity, a little bit. Dehaze, no. There is haze back there, but that's a far kind of cliff wall. I'm fine with it. So, graduated filter over the sky. Texture and clarity are down as it keeps coming back every single time. I'm going to leave them there for a moment. Do you see that kind of painterly effect it does on the sky? Like that. I keep saying that, don't I? This time I'm actually going to leave it. And I'm going to warm up the sky a little bit more and add a little bit of red tint to it. And a little more saturation, not a lot. And highlights down. Let me just see what happens as I start to move this slider. Gosh, looks pretty good. The more I move it down, the more I like it. And then I'm just going to grab this and see what happens if I hit part of that back rock formation. And if you say close, those lines will go away. Sometimes it's hard to tell how that gradation fades out when you still see the lines. And so I take them away, and I have to say, I like it. I like it hitting some of the landscape back there. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to go back, grab this again, and drag up from the bottom. Somewhere in this general vicinity. I'm going to overlap them a little bit. Effect, texture up. I want this rocks and all of this down here to pop. Clarity up. Maybe a teeny bit of dehaze. Just a teeny. Saturation up a teeny bit. Let's see if we can brighten it just a little bit more. And warmth as well. Now, I probably could have overall added a little bit more warmth to this image because notice that both the top graduated filter and the bottom, I added some. But I added different amounts. So, I'm okay with coming in here and doing this like this. Looks pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with that. I'd like this green to pop a little bit more. So I'm going to come into the HSL color panel and find my green and just yank it right or left and see if anything happens. Look at that, very, very little. So aqua. Jeez. Almost like I'm not even working on this image. So I'm going to grab the donut, come down here to part of this green, and drag up and down. And look at that. It's the rocks. I must have clicked on a little rock. So if I hold down the Alt key, I can reset the hue. And the Option key on Windows, see how the words turn to reset? And I'm going to try again with the donut, picking carefully, leading in and finding green and dragging up or down. Wow. Still the rocks. Am I doing that bad a job of picking? Or does Lightroom just really not see that as green? Well, that's weird, isn't it? So how can we fix that? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back up to the basic panel, get the brush, zero it out, take the tint down into the green region. And I'm going to paint a green brush, a green tinty brush on this. Hit the O so I can see where I'm painting. Bracket key, make it smaller off in the distance. And again, nature is really accepting. You can really be sloppy with your brushing. And a lot of times, really not going to be too noticeable. You just come around here real quick. See how that looks. So, and then let's see what happens. We go way green, way tint. Let's go not way green. I don't want it to look like a Slimer green toxic waste, but I want it to be a little bit more noticeable and a little more saturation down there. And what happens if we bring the exposure up a little bit? Just like this world up top is just this dry desert, no green in sight, but down here along the river, we have that, and I think it's neat to see. So I'm going to just kind of paint it in a few more places. Just want to make it show up a little bit more. And it's up to you how far you take that. Let's paint over here for a second and see. You can see a little bit of the green showing up, but it really is only working on the grass itself. So that looks pretty nice. But has anybody else been really bothered by the fact that it feels a little crooked? So I hit R to bring up the crop tool, and now I'm just clicking and dragging outside of it, trying to bring that in a little bit. And this place, Horseshoe Bend, is amazing, but it's tough because there's no real place to photograph without this guy intersecting the water or this corner over here. You don't want to make it. This is a place to violate the rule of thirds, basically, as far as you're centering your big kind of bow or the protruding rock there. So I'm going to go there and say I'm happy with how that looks. Now, the one other thing that I would probably do, brush, dark exposure, but increased saturation. And I love the hints of this reflection down here in the water. So I'm just going to kind of come around that corner and darken the water, but at the same time, bring out a little bit of that saturation of that. And you could even kind of bring that up a lot more to really kind of show it, pushing it a little too far. But I think that's pretty nice. I'm happy with that. So let's hit done. Let's go back to yours. And should we real quick synchronize just to see if there's any other late bloomers? Yes, one. Oh, Jason did a secondary image of that, which is cool. Let's come and look at that in just a second. All right, so here we are in the raw exchange. All of those. And first up, we've got Barb's. And Barb, you were the one that pushed the Yosemite Valley a bit further. This is, I have to say, I love the clouds and all of the textures you see. But I am a little distracted by what's happening up here because to me, I never want to push an image further than something that I would see in nature itself. Maybe it didn't look as good. Maybe that sky wasn't as rich at that moment that I was standing there, but I don't push it further than I think it ever could be on its very best day. And I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this in nature. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm just saying how I do it versus the image we're looking at. Be careful though, you do have a little bit of like just this little teeny bit of bright something poking in there. You want to watch out for that. And this little cloud is catching a little bit of light, but I think that's part of the story. It's not right on the edge of the frame. And I bring up the brightness down here a little bit, but cool, very cool. David has this one. Again, so there's, gosh, if we go back to mine, did it have these textures up here? Because I don't remember that. And, well, let's just do it. We can do that. We have the power. Mine real quick. Yeah, they're there. I left that be bright enough that they're just not as noticeable. So I'm not sure how I feel about those. There, I'd be careful. And this is also where we have kind of this, this is nice and bright down here. I love the kind of view and really feels crispy. I like that. But it feels a little blue down here and then just a little greenish, bluish up here in the corners. Just watch out for those other colors creeping in. This green here is lovely. I don't know how to say your name, Radita. Radita, thank you. I think you've done a fairly mild edit, and I like it. It feels a little darker down in here, and that's probably a little bit, that was a little bit more of the reality of the scene. But, you know, the reality of what it was captured at the back of the camera, of course. Oh, am I still broadcasting? Just told me that failed connection to. Yeah, okay, sorry. It feels a little darker down here, which is very similar, much more similar to what the camera does capture. But our eyes, of course, instantly adjust to a degree as we look over this. You did crop in a little bit more, and because of that, you got this, I'll say it, it looks just like a little weenie, just sticking in just a little bit. And so watch out when cropping to really have either all of the story, or what we can do with this little weenie now is just kind of get rid of it. We want to make sure our opacity is 100 in this case, and somewhere around there, like that. I like that. I think your sky is quite beautiful. Do notice some of that I've been talking about in some of the other ones there, and I think that's. Jason went with another story within the story, and that, I did mention this towards the end of my edit, is you have this lovely reflection. What I think is interesting here, Jason, and that's a nice way of me saying I'm not so sure about, is that we have very different feeling clouds. Up here, they're beautiful, so soft, very pastel. And then down here, we have this very much more orange and puffier cloud. And it honestly doesn't, it almost feels like it's from a different image. So I'd watch out for that. I don't feel like I got that in mind because of the way I processed my sky. But gosh, I love this sky. That's nice. So you kept it pretty bright. You didn't try to recover all of the highlights. And it just has a lovely feel to it. I'd love to know what your settings were for your sky area. I think you did maybe bump the texture up a little bit. Very nice. Kevin has this one here, which feels very dark, very moody. We have this epic sky, really epic. And I think you cropped in a little bit too, because again, not noticing some of that more streaky stuff that we're seeing in some of the other ones. And we're just a little dark down here. I'd like to see that a little brighter for myself. And when you think about printing on the wall, most of the time you want a little bit of a brighter image. But I think you've done a nice job with the sky. Kyle has a beautiful sky. And, you know, we've got this bits of reflection here. And maybe it is more than just Jason's we're knowing. It almost feels like these are clouds from a different scene. But it is just, when I keep looking down here, same with Kevin's, I just want a little bit more detail happening down there in that to kind of get a feel for it. Gosh, lots of you guys did this one. Laurie's feels very similar to mine. Laurie's a great photographer and editor. I was just going to say she paid attention on the Alaska workshop. No, she had her own editing style. It's very nice. I think you've done a nice job. Mary, sky looks lovely. And this is where I really feel like I'm still feeling the blue down here. And I just would like it to be warmer. Don't be afraid of moving those temp and tint sliders around to give a warmer or cooler feel to your image. It can really impact it. Niles went a lot warmer and I think is in a lot of ways similar to mine. You also did crop in. We'll go back to Mary's as an example. I think Mary, you didn't crop at all, so it's much more similar to mine. And I think there's a good argument for cropping in some because one, the bits of the sky I was complaining about in some of the other images, I don't think add anything to this image, so you can come in. This cloud and these clouds are epic. I might give that guy a little bit more room because he's kind of I feel like it's a cute little tugboat pulling a barge, and there's a much bigger. Okay, But I think this is nice. Very nice. And Becky Miller has a very even, subtle edit. You brought the brightness up of the landscape a good bit. I think you could do more, and I think you could warm it up to match the sky a little bit more as well. That's very nice. Robert Forehand, who has a very distinctive style, went with very warm. Does feel a little more green tinted than I want. I'd go this way. I did a plus 30, and I think that's a benefit to it. When I come back here, there's just this little color cast to it that I think looks better this way. Very nice. Interesting choice of the accent color around the border with the purple. You're matching into the sky. I might have chosen more of a reddish color coming from the rocks themselves. Maybe if we go back to your original, a little more like that there. No, I don't think so. But cool. Ryan has another one similar to many that we've seen. And it's funny. It's just funny trying to figure out how many of you have tilted it a little bit, because it did feel just a teeny bit tilted, and not too many. Some of you have definitely cropped in, but not too many changed the tilt at all. Sorry, Ryan's here. Again, though, this is where I think definitely a little warmer of a tone, but really nice. And Sharon. Sharon, I think your edit was very subtle. You definitely brought up the brightness down here a good bit, but notice how I hope you watched and learned from how much you can bring back some of the brightness in the sky, or darken it, and also still keep that bright landscape there. And almost done. Terry. Very nice. Again, though, I'd love to see, I think, this a little bit warmer down here. Chat room. Kyle says I went pretty dark, trying to make it feel like it captured that last bit of daylight, adding some specific dodge and burning to the rock. Oh, did we look at yours yet, Kyle? And this is Brooks. And Brooke, I think your edit is quite similar to mine. You did come in on the left and the right a good bit, and I think that's fine. This little this is a very small image, Brooke. That's why it looks a little pixely. This little rock here, and the fact that you're just cropped in to the edge of the green bothers me. I'd give that just a tiny bit more space, breathing room. Any elements in your frame that have any kind of strength to them or positioning, make sure they have a little bit of breathing room. But I think otherwise that's a nice crop, and that looks pretty good. Let's go back real quick and find Kyle's, because he mentioned specifically, and I want to see if I can tell that you did painting on the rocks. I'll find it somewhere. Oh, wait. No? Were any of these yours, Kyle? Let's go to grid view. Right, Kyle? That's who said it? Just Kyle, yeah. Oh, yeah, right there. You were probably screaming at me when I went buy it before. So you wanted to show catching just a last little bit of light, and you painted on the rocks just a little bit more. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm getting that. I would just still like it just a bit brighter. Just a little bit brighter. And Lisa, you said you just got one in. So let's finish up with yours. Let's try to synchronize. Yeah, one more. You can use synchronize on your own folders. If you've dropped files into them and you want to make Lightroom aware, you can just say synchronize. And Lisa, very nice. Yours looks very similar to mine, and I like it. I think as I saw some of those others that cropped in, I think I would do that again on my own. Don't think that this part of the sky adds anything. So I'm going to use yours as an example to say, yeah, I'd come in a little bit. You don't need too much of the sky to tell the story. Most of the story is down here with just a little slice of this epic sky up here. And that's when I'm out in the world shooting. How do I tell how much sky to include? Depends on how exciting the sky is and where that excitingness stops. A lot of times I see people include, let's say it's a beautiful blue sky with big white puffy clouds. How much of those big white puffy clouds do you need to show? Only the first couple of them. You don't have to get all of the sky unless your landscape isn't that exciting. Then go ahead and make it about the sky. But if your landscape's exciting, don't include too much of the sky, because then you just kind of get this broad view and you're like, what's happening here? All right. So, no, back to me. If you're watching this and you don't already follow me somewhere, you can follow me, Photorec Toby. And yeah, thank you. Thank you all for tuning in, for watching this. If you appreciated it and found it helpful, give that thumbs up a click. And of course, as I said, subscribe. And photorec.tv/Lightroom is where you can find a list of all of the workshops. And if you're watching this and you submitted an image and you're not a PEN member, consider joining. There's a fantastic community, lots of awesome resources, all available to you. And photorec.tv/join is the easiest place to find out more information. And we are running that special. So we'll do these again. We'll do this again at some point. Let me know. Comment, send me a message, email. If you really found it super helpful, let me know. If it was just okay, if you got feedback, maybe we should do less images. Maybe I should go faster. Maybe I should go slower. Let me know what you think. I can take feedback. And thank you all so much for watching.